I just want to start by saying I'm hoping that we will be able to have a lot of time for questions. I think part of our interest in doing this is so that we can interact with the community and be able to make this a dialogue, because part of what I've seen over the last 50 years is these are ideas, these are issues that are not often talked about or not talked about openly. So I want to just start by saying I realize I'm nervous speaking, and I speak to groups about books and about ideas and about my work and about, in 50 years of doing the work, you do a lot of speaking. But speaking personally about my mental health issues to a public forum and people I know and people I don't know, I just want to acknowledge it's a little scary. Part of the courage for me to do this is I wrote some things. I'm a writer, and I wrote a couple of things about my own experience with being bipolar. And the community, people came up to me for months afterwards and just said how helpful that was, and sharing stories of their own issues and their own families and things. So it encouraged me to take another step in sharing a little bit of my story. So most people don't know that I'm bipolar. It's really not the kind of thing that comes up in normal conversation. I can talk about my dislocated knee. I can talk about even my adrenal tumor that I had a number of years ago. But talking about going on manic runs with what my mind's doing, or talking about the pressures of living in a very sped up, addictive world, doesn't often come up in conversation. I don't talk about being on runs where I'm spending more money than I ought to be spending, or going online and spending an inordinate amount of time, with my latest idea of how I'm going to save the world. Or my wife mentioning to me, as she always does in a very kind and caring way, you're getting a little wound up and manic. But what does she know? She's just my wife. So I think part of what these issues are that these things are not easy to talk about. There's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of disinformation and lack of information. And the result is that many people who need help don't get help. Many people who need support don't get support. So I want to start by just sharing a couple of personal stories, because really I think the entree for me both into getting help and giving help is being able to be honest and to be real. So for me, I remember visiting my father in the mental hospital when I was 5 years old. All I knew at the time was that he had taken an overdose of drugs and was committed to Camarillo State Mental Hospital in Los Angeles. I also knew that it was my duty to help my father. In our family, duty was an important thing that we grew up with. I didn't know what was the matter with him, but I knew that I needed to go help. And so I went for a year with my uncle every week from the time I was 5 years old to visit my father. And mental hospitals are not great places to be at any time for many people. Back when he was there, he was misdiagnosed. Back then, the idea of being bipolar was not very well known. The treatments that were given back then were electroshock treatments and antipsychotic drugs. And what I knew was over the weeks that I went to visit him, he got worse and worse. And on one of the visits, he turned to my uncle and he said, "Harry, who's the kid with you?" And I was devastated. My father didn't know who I was. So I grew up wanting to get as far away as I could from that experience. I wanted nothing to do with what happened to him. My mother, of course, was terrified that whatever happened to him might happen to me. Her view was, I think, somehow that it could rub off on you. You know, it was kind of the common fear, not so different from many other fears that we have about illness, that somehow it'll rub off on you. So she never visited. All the weeks that I went, she stayed home, I visited. And over the years since then, I grew up with 3 terrors. One was the terror of, would I end up like my father and somewhere try to kill myself? Other terror was, would I end up in a mental hospital like him and be forgotten? The third terror is, would somehow, as I got older and I had children, would this be something that would carry on to them, and somehow this curse that I felt at the time would be passed on to my children. So another story. It's 1972. I'm 28 years old. I'm the director of county drug abuse programs. I'm on top of the world. Everything's wonderful. I save people. I solve problems. I get things done. You get a little taste of the manic energy that starts happening with that kind of... Now, there's something very interesting and engaging about that energy, but it also has a dark side. The dark side for me, as a 28-year-old at that time, was that things were not good at home in my relationship. I suspected my then wife was seeing somebody else. And I was having a flirtation with one of the women that I worked with. Of course, I knew nobody knew what was going on. I was sure we were being very discreet. I was sure that, and why not? I mean, it was the times. Now, when she invited me to her house for our lunch hour, I thought our flirtation was going to go to the next level. And why not? I mean, a little spice in my life, you know, given the stresses I was under and given how hard I was working, why not? A little frosting on the cake. So we came to her house, and as we did, we started taking off our clothes. And she mentioned to me, she said, "Oh, I probably should tell you, I don't want to talk about my husband," she said, "but my husband is a deputy sheriff." I grabbed my clothes. I wanted to get out of there as quickly as I could. But just one kiss for the road, you understand. And you can probably guess what happened. So we went ahead, we made mad, passionate love with that edge of terror and fear that's so much a part of, you know, people like me who are bipolar and manic. And by the end of that time, as I was getting ready to leave, she said, "Oh, well, it's okay, you can take your time because he very rarely comes home on his lunch hour." I said, "Very rarely?" Well, I got out of there, luckily, with my life, and as I started coming down from the highs that we get from the various drugs that are coursing through our veins, the adrenaline, the testosterone, the dopamine, the testosterone, lots of testosterone, I started realizing that this was serious. People die in these situations. This was not television. And so I said to myself, "You need help." And then I said to myself, "But I'm busy. I have things to do. I've got programs to lead. I've got people to help. I've got people to save." And so I got back on with my life. And 26 years later, my wife, Carlin, after I had been through 2 divorces, that one, the next one, she started talking to me about what may be going on with me that I've been not wanting to deal with. And she suggested that maybe I might have a problem. Now, of course, I knew I had a problem. But when you're manic and you have problems, and you have not just manic, but we all want to deny that we have problems. We all want it to be somewhere else. We all want it to be not me. It's got to be somebody else. And besides, I'm a professional. Wouldn't I know if I had a problem? And you can fill in the blank of, we're a whatever. We're too educated. We're too smart. We know too much. So the problems hide in the shadows. So Carlin suggested I go see a doctor. In fact, she sent me to the doctor that she had seen because she realized that dealing with depression was something that was helpful to her. So I went to the doctor that she suggested, mostly to get her off my back because I knew I didn't have really a problem, but I wanted to let her know that, hey, I'm okay. See, I did what you said. I went to the doctor. So she said when I got back, well, how'd it go? And I said, well, I didn't like him. He wasn't that good, and he wasn't that sympathetic, and he just didn't get me. And I said, well, what did he say? Well, he said, we could probably debate whether you're bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, but you have bipolar and you should be treated. I said, well? I said, I want another opinion. She said, my wife, Carlin, who's been very kind, gracious, and smart about these things, said, you want another opinion? I'll give you another opinion. You got a problem, my husband, and you need to get help. Well, I didn't listen. I finally decided, well, I will get another opinion. I'll go talk to another doctor. So I found my own doctor, and she was really tuned in. I thought, all right, we clicked. We were resonant with each other. She really understood me. She got me, and I thought, now I'm going to get the clean bill of health that I've been waiting for. And she said, well, Jed, we could probably debate whether you're bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, but you need help. So I listened that time, and I started taking medications for the first time, which I had resisted, and I started getting better. I started doing psychotherapy with the doctor, and I started getting even better still. I started keeping a journal and log about my manic and depressive mindset and being able to track the things that would either trigger the ups and downs and what I would do to get better, and I got even better. And things started improving in my relationship life and my professional life. And for the first time, I realized that mental illness and mental health was part of my life. And I learned a number of things. I'll just conclude by telling you a few things that I learned from the experiences. The first is that all of us have some degree of stress, dysfunction that in some way is going to impair us at some point in our lives. It isn't just them. That was one of my big learnings. Secondly, that there shouldn't be any more stigma about mental illness as there is about physical illness. But there is. There is among all of us, even who work in the field, people who are in the audience. It's part of it, and being able to acknowledge, the feelings that go with it and our own, things about, being a little crazy and how that manifests we need to talk about and deal with. Third, I learned that in order to get healthy, we need a number of things. We need a change in our mindset, number one. It helps if we have family that are both supportive but can give the hard love that says, hey, you know what, you need help, And hey, it's your decision. I'll take care of me. When you're ready, you'll do the right thing. We need really good, caring professionals, and they're not easy to find, to come by, but they're there in our communities, and we need to support them, and we need more of them. And finally, we need a community that really recognizes that mental illness is probably the most destructive aspect of our community lives. It influences everything. It's like a poison that changes all the things that we interact with. And mental health is the greatest benefit and the greatest gift that we can give ourselves, our families, and our communities. And finally, what I've learned is that we have to come together as a community. We have to recognize that it isn't going to happen by them over there, whoever we think them over there is going to be that's going to solve the problem. It really is all of us together. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end after we've all spoken. There'll be plenty of times. I'm happy to answer anything that anybody might want to put out, and happy to share with you. So, Tom?
Thank you, Jed. I haven't heard that story, and that was very compelling. Thank you. There's 100 people here. Do you guys know this is a mental health discussion? Is there a free raffle or something I don't know about? Mental health, here's how it's different than the weather. Mark Twain said, everybody talks about it, but nobody does anything about it. And mental health, nobody talks about it, and nobody does anything about it. That's the difference. And we're very lucky right now in Mendocino County because we are talking about it in every corner of our county. We're talking about it. 5150 of the Welfare Institution Code. It's a very strong section of our law. Someone who's gravely disabled, a danger to themselves, or danger to others. That's a very, very black and white law. But what about people who are not 5150, but they certainly need to talk about something to somebody, whether it's talking about to their spouse, their neighbor, themselves. Kevin Bacon gets credit for this 6 degrees of separation. And just to remind you what that is the theory, and it actually came out in 1929, that everybody in the world, all of us, are 6 degrees from anybody else in the world. A friend of a friend and a friend of a friend and so forth. And I truly believe that all of us are 1 degree separation from mental health, mental illness. Whether it's our neighbor, our family, ourselves, our employees, our employers, someone at school, who knows what. And we're not talking about it. If you broke your arm, let's hope you don't, you broke your leg, you'd go to this wonderful hospital we have, they'd x-ray you, maybe even give you an MRI, who knows what. The doctor would say we have a broken bone, and we have the best physicians in California, if not Western America here, and they'd fix you up, and in about 6 weeks, you'd be raving about the medical condition you had and the incredible treatment you were given, and you're as good as new. But now mental illness is something different. You've heard this phrase, chemical imbalance. Well, what the hell does that mean? Chemical imbalance. And we're all different. We're not the same. We have different DNA, we have different genetics, and we all have different chemicals. Our bodies are different. And when somebody's chemically imbalanced, it might take 4, 5, 6 years for true professionals to say, this is what we're doing. We're going to try this, we're going to try this, we're going to go this dose and that dose. And everybody's like this. So mental illness is not something that we can avoid talking about. We should be talking about it. We're a very healthy community. Mendocino County is very healthy. And we have to improve our mental health situation. And we are, I'm prohibited, well, I don't know, prohibited. I'm greatly discouraged from talking politics in this room. But I will tell you, after this meeting, I will be downstairs outside the doors and give anybody a sign who wants to take a sign home that talks politics, because we need Measure B. So I appreciate you discussing that with me afterwards, but I won't break any rules right now. In September of 2005, I received a phone call from people who were in New Orleans and said the hurricane had happened, New Orleans had been devastated, and they wanted to know if I wanted to go back and work as a law enforcement officer in New Orleans, protecting actually some nuclear activity that was in a hospital, a stem cell research lab. And so I told my wife I'm leaving about 3 weeks, and my wife, she's manager of the bank here, and so two boys, they were, I don't know, at that time, 12 and 14. I said, Dad will be back here, and be back in a couple weeks. And so I went to New Orleans. Just a horrible situation. The city had this horrible stench to it. There was nobody around, and we were the law there. We were making sure, and we didn't have cell phones because cell phones had basically been taken out with the hurricane. So one morning I woke up and my cell phone was actually going off. So someone had brought in some cell phone towers, and now my cell phone's going crazy with all these messages that I had not had for a week and a half, and one of them was from my brother. Well, actually about 20 of them were from my brother Dan. Call me, Tom. Call me. And then he's done it this time. He's talking about my brother Mike. So my brother Mike was an incredibly intelligent person. I'm going to say my brother Mike was one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. 2 college degrees. He was a biologist. He loved water. He was a great dad. He was everything that this guy could be, except he had that dark side. And I think some of you know someone who has everything going for him, but they have the dark side. So one night, my brother decided to test the will of the Fortuna Police Department, and he got himself up in a house and barricaded him in with a son. His son was at that time 2 years old, and Fortuna Police Department, God bless him, did everything they could to get him out, but my brother killed himself that night. And at that time, the hurricane had shut down the airports, and that Hurricane Rita was coming in, so we couldn't even go to Texas for an airport. So I just told my brother, there's nothing I can do. He's done, he's gone, and so forth. But my mother, who's still alive, she's 85 years old. Every waking hour of her life, she's so sad for my brother Mike, and I'm just kind of mad for my brother Mike because what I see it as selfish. I've had 2 deputy sheriffs commit suicide as your sheriff. Suicide hurts. So what my goal is to friggin' get mental health addressed. Thank you for that recovery 10 seconds. Thank you very much. So as we go through this stage in Mendocino County, we're going through this healthcare fiasco in Washington. We're going through Sacramento talking about single payer. And I'm going to tell you this, that nobody outside of Mendocino County is going to take care of our needs other than us. Nobody. And if anybody's thinking that we can wait on this white knight on a steed rushing in and say, Mendocino County, I know you're just a rural county and you're poor and there's, we can help you. I'm telling you that'll never happen. So mental health has to be addressed. Mental health has to be prioritized. We have laws on the books that tell us how many fire engines in each city. I have people that tell me how many law enforcement officers we have to have in this county, but nobody says how many mental health technicians or mental health hospitals we have to have. It's just not prioritized. Since 1991, when California went through the realignment of mental health and they took it away from the state, and it went to the county's responsibilities. That certainly was a detrimental time in our state. But then let's go back to the early 70s, and don't blame Ronald Reagan, please. Don't say Ronald Reagan. It was started by Pat Brown to close our state hospitals, and Ronald Reagan finished it. He could have stopped it, but Ronald Reagan finished it. So it was Democrat and Republican. There's no politics here. California went from 40,000 beds of state hospitals to right now we have 4,000 beds. California went from 14 million people to 29 million people, so we have 10% of the beds and we have double the population. Right now, if we had someone going to a hospital that needed to be put into a state bed, we would be looking at upwards of a month, waiting 30 days for a vacancy to come up. So please don't think this safety net exists, because the safety net's not there. And I think government would love for you to think that everything's fine, don't worry about it. It's good. But I'm the one who's in the driver's seat of seeing what's really happening. And I'm the one who's seen 70-year-old men jump off the Noyo Bridge because they feel as if life is not worth living. So you're here tonight, I think we're preaching to the choir. You're here tonight not out of coincidence. It's not an accident you're here. You're here because you want to try to help, I hope. I think you're here to try to figure out where we are in Mendocino County for mental health and try to find help for either that person you love so dearly, try to find help for you, or just say, how can our community get better? And that is exactly why we're all here. So when Jed put this together, and I thank you very much, Jed, and the Howard Hospital, thank you, the foundation started, and Jed called us to see. We really didn't know what was going to happen. When I came in tonight, I thought there were going to be 25 people here because who cares about mental health? But apparently a lot more people than I thought, because it's a beautiful time to be outside tonight. But we're here talking about what I believe is a number one public safety issue in our county. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom and Jed. I never know where to begin these things. First of all, what I usually do is tell people I've had a great past, but not much of a future. But, and I have to use notes, I just, to keep on track here. I've always been gay. I'm an alcoholic, 37 years sober. I'm mildly dyslexic. I'm obsessive compulsive to a fault. And I'm bipolar, those things. So I beat the odds. I'm 67 and I'm still here. And that's pretty good, actually. That's a big deal to me because I've gone through most of my life without a diagnosis. And it wasn't until I was 50 that I actually found these things out, that I was bipolar and that I was obsessive compulsive and that dyslexia affected my life and my learning skills, things along that line. Anyway, backing up a little bit, being gay, for those of you who think I chose a lifestyle, you're wrong. Think again. Homosexuals are born that way. We didn't make a choice. That's the way we are, period. We just don't get to choose. Homosexuality is no longer an abnormal thing. However, it was up until 1973. And I came out when I was 16. I was 23 when the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, said that it was no longer an abnormality, that it was just a regular thing, so to speak. Being alcoholic, it was self-medication for me for about 20 years. I quit when I was 31 years old. I was such a mess. I had lost everything twice. And, things just were not good. I was no longer any fun, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. The dyslexia, it's minor, but it makes things difficult. I switch up my words a lot. I switch my words around a lot, and I have a little difficulty in reading and memory problems galore. Being obsessive compulsive, what a time I have with this. This is probably, it's a disorder that challenges me daily. Repetitive cycles of order and disorder. I'm also bipolar, and the benefits of the disease, like Jed, I love the mania. The mania it's the best. You get so much done. You just get so much done, and you're real happy while you're doing it, and you get a buzz while you're doing it. It's good all the way around. But you pay for it in the long run because, unfortunately, you go into depression after a long bout of mania. And that's a place I never want to go back to again. I do from time to time, but not the dramatic way that it affected me when I tried to take my life. The mania of bipolar, this is by the book, can lead to risk-taking behavior, aggression, and hostility. So it may put one in physical danger, and it does. It does. I thought about suicide many, many times during my life. It just seemed like it would make things easier. And finally, when I sort of bit the bullet, that is to my decision to take my life one day, I had the sensibility, I don't know why, to call a suicide hotline. I looked them up in the phone book. Yeah, we had phone books then. And they took me in immediately, and some wonderful, wonderful woman talked to me. I don't remember what she said or anything else, but all of a sudden I thought that I had a medical condition. I thought. I wasn't sure. So anyway, she got done with me, and we made another appointment to come in the following morning to see doctors. I went home and I looked up bipolar in a dictionary from the 1980s. Bipolar was 2 points on the globe. That's all we knew about it. That's what it was. That's what it said in the dictionary. Didn't give me anything else to go on. I went in the following day and they gave me this most marvelous medication. I don't know what it was. I can't remember, but boy, it made me feel good almost right away. They didn't keep me on it. You can't, whatever it was, affects the liver. I'm real sorry I didn't have it, because to find the right drugs to take care of, for me to take care of myself, took about 3 years. And that was trying over again, and something I took Wellbutrin once, and that was supposed to help. My lips blew up. It looked kind of good, actually, because I don't have any lips. But I broke out in rashes all over my body, and this was something that was even supposed to help me with my smoking, and so on and so forth. It didn't. Anyway, we had to change drugs. It took about 3 years to find the right, I call it a cocktail, find the right cocktail to take, and it works, and it's worked ever since. And I have had to change drugs once or twice along the way, but never, again, it works. You've got to take your drugs if you're bipolar, or if you have any mental condition. It's very, very important. Racing thoughts are something that I deal with. My mind races thoughts, but creatively with a dash of memories and associations with current projects or projected projects. It spins. I think, I get creative. And somewhere in the middle of my creative thought, suddenly I'm 6 years old and eating a popsicle on the porch, and on and I go. It makes no sense when I have these racing thoughts. It just rolls and rolls and rolls. It drives you nuts. It is nuts. Finances, what little bit I had, I spent on going to college at a late age. And I'm terrible with money. I'm still bad with it. Improper sexual acts, there have been many of those. There was a program on HBO called 6 Feet Under. Did anyone see it? You know the guy that was bipolar? He was the brother or the sister and this and that. He was crazier than I was on that program. But anyway, what was kind of, but I watched this guy and I thought, is this what people think of me? This was like, 10 years ago, would you say? About that? Yeah. Is this what people think of me? Because you're bipolar? Everybody has this look of sympathy about them when I tell them I'm bipolar. And it's been kind of cool. Like I said, I love the mania and the creativity that goes along with it. Now, I've been able to manage my maddening conditions or my madness by accepting it and designing my world around it. I have to harness these. I have to harness experience that might draw other people insane. I design everything I do, from grooming in the morning to filling my pockets. And these sound like pretty normal tasks, but obsessive-compulsive person turns everything into a ritual and everything into an ordeal about the way things are done, and I do that. I'm not afraid of stepping on cracks and things along that line. I used to be so fastidious. If everybody smoked in the day, you remember that? Well, anyway, I did too. And, but if somebody would put a cigarette out in my ashtray, not only would I lift the ashtray immediately, rinse it off, just not wipe it off, rinse it off and put it back exactly where it went on the table. Exactly. It had to be perfect. I drove myself nuts for years doing this. I finally got help. And now I'm kind of a delightful mess. I've gone just in the opposite direction. And again, I've gone to extremes. I go to extremes with everything. It's not that I mean to. It's just, it happens that way. I don't know what to say. It took years of practice to get over that fastidiousness, and now my desk is a joyful mess. I don't have to deal with everything in its place anymore. Now, if it makes it kind of like in the area, it's okay with me. I don't mind it too much. My motto has always been too much is just enough, and that's the OCD talking, and sometimes it's a good thing. For example, when I do design, I go all the way. I don't go halfway. Half measures, they say in the program, in AA avail you nothing, and I feel that way about designing things. Go all the way with it. It's proposed that there's a particular link between creativity and mental illness, bipolar and major depressive situations and things along that line. They say that they're significantly more common among playwrights, novelists, biographers, and artists. The association between mental illness and creativity first appeared in literature in the 1970s, but the idea of a link between madness and genius is much older. Now, I Googled it, creativity and mental illness. I came up with 2,300,000, papers on it. 2,300,000. Anyway, so there have to be links there. I mean, Romantic writers had similar ideas. Lord Byron had a pleasantly expressed, "We of the craft are all crazy. Some are affected by gaiety, others by melancholy, but we are all more than touched." A book called Touched with Fire by Kay Jameson. In the book, Jameson links the biological foundations of the disease with what we know as the bipolar illness to some of the world's greatest artists, Van Gogh, Virginia Woolf, Lord Byron, who I just mentioned, people along that line. Now, individuals with mental illness are said to display a capacity to see a world in a novel and original way, literally to see things that others cannot, and I believe this is true. I believe it's very true. No, I don't see mystical things or anything like that, but if I have an idea, I can see that plan into fruition where others can't. And the reason that I know, not only can I do it, but I'm good at it, is people have told me that over the years, time and time again. You're so creative, which you always go, yeah. And how do you do that? And I never know how to tell people I create something. It's just second nature with me. It doesn't, I never really understood what people were talking about when they said, how can you do that? You mean you don't think like I do? You mean you don't see what I see? You know, it wasn't until I was about in my 60s that I finally decided I really am good at this stuff. You know, I could really accept credit for what I was doing. If you're bipolar, if you're thinking, maybe you're bipolar, maybe you're OCD, maybe you've got some kind of a mental condition, go to a doctor, please. Go to a psychiatrist, go to a therapist, get started somewhere. I had to get started. Like I said, I was 50. My world fell apart. I was going to commit suicide. I got very, very lucky. And my therapy was going to school. I went back to school. I got a degree, an MA in art history. I was real happy with that. I did my whole college experience at the age of 50. It was wonderful. But take your meds. I would be dead without them. I would be dead without my medication. I know I would be. I take 5 different prescribed drugs for my illness, and those drugs work. Like I said, it took several years to come up with the right mix, but boy, once you got it, you know, life gets so much easier. You can breathe again. You can just, you know, we're all hesitant to take drugs for one reason or the other. It's important that, I guess what I learned in the program was that my way didn't always work in the AA program. My way doesn't always work. Someone else, you know, their way may work better than I am. It took me a long time to figure that out. Once again, and during life, I mean, many times I'd be slapping myself upside the head saying, Gary, what's wrong with you? Get over it, get over it. There's no getting over these things without medication. I had to have medication to do it. So anyway, they made my life easier, manageable, and literally saved my life. I still have my ups and downs today, but the medication keeps me on an even keel, and it helps me a lot. It really does. I got a few more minutes here. I want a facility where I can go to if I'm in need. Now, I went to Ukiah once before on a suicide mission, and it wasn't, you know, I wasn't quite there, but I was close to 50-51. I was more like 50-50. Yeah. So I went there, and these people, they weren't going to keep me there. They really didn't know. They were young. You know, here I am in my 60s, and these guys are like 25, and I'm telling them what's wrong and expecting them to, you know, fix this thing. No, it didn't work. We need a real professional care facility here. I believe that 100%. If I didn't have one when I lived in San Jose when I was 50, I'd be dead. I mean, they had a facility where they could take me in and keep me for a couple of days and smooth me out, so to say. You know, with new drugs and all those kind of things, it worked real well. And so anyway, the suicide facility in Ukiah that they have right now just isn't enough for me. I went there, like I said, once, and I outthought the facilitator faster than he could, leave me with the encounter. Anyway, I want that facility. I want a facility here, not just for me. Oh, yeah, I need one. Oh, yeah, there are limits to my medication. So, and people have seen that before, too. It's not a pretty thing. But I want this facility for all of us. We have a lot of mentally ill people here. We have a lot of them. We have a lot of people that are only mildly touched, like Tom or Jed was saying, that deal with some degree of mental illness. Maybe it's just a little bit. It can always develop into more. We just need proper help. We need a proper facility here for people that are as damaged as I was. Thank you very much.
I have a question. I lived in Ukiah for 12 years. I was somewhat involved in the mental health system, and I know where there could be help. I moved here to Willits. Can you just briefly say, if I ran into somebody either on the street or a friend or whoever that I felt needed to talk to somebody right then and there in Willits, where would I take them?
We still have a Department of Mental Health. The contractor to provide the 5150 and the ongoing counseling is Redwood Quality Management, which I'm very satisfied with. We had a number in the county called 463-HELP. Somebody made a decision to change the number, and it's on this piece of paper. I thought the 463-HELP was a great number. But we really need that. I mean, if we have that responsibility as a human being, Tom, if somebody says, I need to talk to somebody, we can't say snap out of it. We wouldn't say that with a broken leg. We'd say, yeah, you need to see a doctor. Some people are a parking ticket away, and some people are all the way to, I lost my entire family in an airplane crash thinking about suicide. There's this huge spectrum in there. And sometimes it's just talking to someone that's going to help. The statewide average of county jails are 20% of the inmates are mentally ill. In sleepy little Mendocino County, we have 305 people a night sleeping in our jail. I'm not very proud of that. I'll be proud when the jail commander comes to me and says we need to close a wing of the jail because we have too few inmates. Woohoo, high five. Of our 310 inmates, that means that every morning when the sun comes up, we have 60 people, male and female, who are in jail who are mentally ill. We need to figure out the right place to treat these people. Now, I'm not talking about they're in jail for being mentally ill, because it's not against the law to be mentally ill. Don't get me wrong on this one. But what happens is when you don't have the right services in a county, then someone who's mentally ill decompensates to the point where they do commit a minor crime. They push grandma, or they break a mirror, or they break into somebody's houses, and the family will say this. I kid you not, I've heard this 100 times. We need him to go to jail so he can get some help. Really? Is society gone to that level where we're going to send someone to jail to get help? It's a jail. It's not a mental health facility. So we have to improve. God helps those who help themselves. And I have an aunt that says the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I'm working pretty hard on this mental health thing, because we have to get a place where people know what they can do. And this is not the county of Ukiah, okay? It's not. We're not just going to have something in Ukiah. We'll certainly have something inland and something on the coast, because the coast is a place where we certainly have a population equal to inland where there's a mental health crisis. So we will continue that. So I used your question for a segue into that. Thank you so much, Tom.
On that same question, can I ask you, I 6 weeks ago called the crisis line, the 855 at the rec, and talked to someone who was a little bit interesting, and my crisis was different than what they expected. And so they directed me to, I don't know the name, maybe it was Redwood, over where Seltzer Realty used to be.
Right.
So I get down there, I talked to someone there that said, come in. I come in, I give them my insurance card, I'm just like so thankful that I get to talk to someone. And they go, oh, you have to be on Medi-Cal, you can't have services. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It was just like, I talk about a 2x4 because I have insurance. Now my family member is on Medi-Cal, but they didn't want me there. I was trying to figure out how do I survive and help. So that was frustrating, and someone did come out and sent me, they sent me to psychology.com.
So I know this is being recorded, so let me just paraphrase your question. That you went, no, that's good. I should have carried a microphone down there. My bad. So you went to East Goby. You went to the East Goby, which is a 24/7 location. And it is a location where, and I haven't been told that people who have private insurance cannot go there. News to me, but I don't represent Redwood Quality Management, okay? But we certainly, if that's the case, and I'm not doubting you, we need to improve it because I don't care if you have no insurance. If you have nothing, if you need to talk, you need to talk. So I'll take that with me tonight. That'll be my first takeaway. Yes, sir.
There's actually something in this county called mental first aid, mental health first aid. Wendover, I think, at Manzanita. She was one of the co-teachers who actually will address, if you see somebody that's in distress, you can actually perform a little bit of mental first aid. We all know about physical first aid, but mental first aid. And to get them to, certain techniques you can use to do the immediate calming down or whatever, and then eventually get them to an actual professional. So, yeah, so if you want to see me afterwards.
So what a great segue. Jed, I don't mean to hog the mic, but hold on one second here. So in 1991, when the state of California did this mental health realignment, what they said is, we'll just train our law enforcement officers to go take care of the initial onset of this. Now, I want you to work with me on this one, okay? It doesn't take a lot to get here. Take this 21-year-old deputy sheriff that for 6 months he's been in a police academy. His instructors have said, kid, everybody out there is out there to get you. It's us against them. This is why you have a baton. This is why you have mace. This is why you have a gun. You got to protect yourself. These people are out to get you. And now we're sending this 21-year-old kid to a 50-year-old man who's having the most serious psychotic breakdown he's ever experienced in his life. And then when something happens and law enforcement kills someone, because we've seen it on TV, the very first question is, well, chief, well, sheriff, why did your officer, deputy, kill this person? Well, that's a fair question, but that's not the question to be asking. The question is, why was law enforcement there to start with? Why didn't we get the right person responding to that location? When your house is on fire, don't call a plumber, please. Okay, call a fire department. And so mental first aid is something that we certainly treat law enforcement. And so let me tell you what we've done in March of this year. In March, go. In March, I had our dispatcher and Ukiah Police Department dispatcher do a 30-second survey on every mental health call. And the survey said, was there a weapon involved? Was there imminent danger? Was there a current suicide happening? Was there violence? And how was it disposed of? Because law enforcement right now is responding to everything. And what we found out is, in this county, 30% of all mental health calls that come into 911, there's no violence, there's no weapon, and there's no imminent danger. So really, do we need to send our most expensive public safety employee with licensed sirens to somebody who's having a psychotic episode, and now all their neighbors are saying, oh my gosh, he's finally done it now. What's happening? So we're trying to become smarter on this one, because when I say that everybody at some time in their life has experiences some kind of depression, I've already got the question, well, Sheriff, are you pretty depressed right now? Well, I'm not, but I'm telling you that I've certainly been in a time, I've gone through school, I've gone through lots of things where I've wanted to talk to somebody. And the more we want to talk to somebody, the more we realize it's perfectly okay to say, we need to talk to somebody. And if you have, Tom, if you have a friend that says, I need to talk to somebody, hooray, somebody has enough trust in you to say that. Because some people think that they have to man up and not do that.
What I wanted to say to that person is, actually, we have no one in Willits. If you're having an emergency and it's not a police officer, we have no one. I want you to just take a minute and register that. No one. There used to be someone, we had a mental health outreach program over at our West Center, Willits, Services Center, WISC, and that got shut down. No, we didn't have the money for that. So the reality is there's no one here. There used to be someone through the center. So they were like 9 to 5, and they even sometimes had people later and on weekends. But that's all been sucked back into Ukiah. So you need to know that. You need to think about that. So some of the things that you see out there when people are struggling and need a little help, well, it's not here, babe. So that's why we call the cops. I've had to call the cops on my own son.
Let me correct a little bit of this. So I want to give a correction and a shout out to Manzanita. And if you have never heard of Manzanita, I'll tell you that dollar for dollar, it's the best nonprofit this county's ever seen. What they do with a dollar costs government, Government spends $10 for Manzanita to spend $1 and accomplish more with Manzanita. And they actually are here, and they have people who, they just drop in. So what Manzanita is people who used to be frequent flyers of law enforcement. Their families have realized they can send their loved one, and here it's for just 40 hours a week, it's not 24/7, but they can go and they can sit and they can stare out the window, they can knit, they can cook, they can crochet, whatever they want, or they can talk, they can do nothing. But once we found out that all they want to do is have their own place to go, now law enforcement is no longer having to respond to them. That's a victory there.
Where is it?
Where is it?
Church
Methodist
on Pine
Church here.
Street.
Methodist Church in Willits is
On
where.
Pine Street.
And is there a phone number that you are?
Well, I work at the senior center. I'm the outreach worker there, and what I'm experiencing, and just like Jane said, we do call the police. I've had to a million times because I don't know who else to call to come and get them. We cannot transport them. Yes, Manzanita is a great place. It is an awesome place. I send people there who can actually get there. But for the people who are out of it, I don't know who to call to come and get them except the police. And then when I do call them, the first things out of those people's mouth is, I'm not going to hurt anybody, and I'm not a danger to anybody else. They know the script, but it's not good because we've had to, we've just had to be that tough person. I've had to be that tough person and just say, okay, I can help you in certain ways, but this behavior of yours, I can't do anything about right now, and I can't help you this way. And so I don't know who to call. Who do I call to come and get that person off the property? I have a person who I just found out today is in Vallejo Behavioral Health. Been there for a couple of weeks, probably be there for another couple of weeks. I'm the only person that can calm him down in that whole center. He comes in there, he's huge, he scares everybody. But when he comes to me, he's okay. But he comes to me after he's spoken to a psychiatrist, after he's spoken to a shrink, and then he comes in and has a session with me. That's really not my job. I don't even have any training, but I do it because I think it's the right thing for me to do. But I don't really know who to call to come and get these people. And then they don't qualify to be taken anywhere somehow. But they are, it's not like they're going to always go kill somebody, but they are in danger because they're out on the street. A lot of them are homeless. I get a lot of the homeless people with the mental health problems. And I think the elements are getting to them because they are homeless. I don't know who to call to come and get them, to help them be somewhere else, somewhere where they can get help. So that's my question. Who do I call?
I think one of the things that we're getting from the questions and those of us that have been doing this for a while is the need is great. The availability of services is limited. And so part of what we're doing now is trying to at least share what we do know, where services are available, and then the need to get a lot more of the things that are needed. Can you answer her question at all?
Well, I can answer by saying there's not an exact answer to this. I mean, listen, law enforcement is, as we speak right now, it's almost 6 o'clock, I would imagine, a little after 6:30. I have one deputy in Covelo, one deputy in Laytonville, and maybe we have one in Willits. And if we end up with a 5150, we will be at the hospital for 3 hours. And if he's violent, then that's a two-person job, two-deputy job at the hospital, so that'll leave one deputy out. So while people do get frustrated over law enforcement's lack of transportation, I think that we could step it up to where we could have a suitable answer for the question, because it's a fair question. We all pay taxes. We all deserve some kind of answer to that, but law enforcement is the final safety net in any government problem, whether it's a skunk underneath the porch, or whether it's a power line across the road, or whether it's a ditch is washed out. They're going to call law enforcement when there's no one else who answers the phone. And then people get frustrated when law enforcement says he doesn't meet the 5150 criteria and we're not a taxi cab. I mean, honestly, that's where we are right now. Law enforcement in Mendocino County, and I'm not crying on your shoulders because I love my job, but we have the same number of deputies today as we had when Nixon was first term of office. Okay? We have 43 deputy sheriffs in. We have actually 42 right now, but I'm looking for more. Please send them my way. So it's not like we are just chomping at the bit to come be a transport service, because we can't. But I'm telling you that if we can get Measure B passed, while the world is not going to be, roses and cream and peaches, we're certainly going to see a positive transition. But I want to talk about the homeless for just a minute, because a lot of people have said, gosh, if we could just get a mental health hospital, we wouldn't have these homeless people. Well, let me clearly say, everybody who's homeless is not mentally ill, and everybody who's mentally ill is not homeless. But there's an overlap. There's probably a 30% overlap of people who are homeless and mentally ill that law enforcement deals with because no one else deals with. But we can do better. We can figure out a way, whether it's a Manzanita project. I can tell you what Fortuna Police Department's doing, and I think this is a brilliant idea. Fortuna Police Department is going to homeless people and mentally ill people and so forth who are from out of the area and not putting them on a bus and buying them a ticket, because that's illegal, but saying, who can we call in your hometown and figure out a way to get you home if you can get home? And they have a nonprofit where people can donate, and it buys airline tickets and bus tickets, and it reunites people, because one of the reasons that we think that mental health services should be more in Mendocino County is a family is very often the reason, or the ability for this person to get better. Now, the family often is the reason this person is acting like that, but we do need the reunification to where this person is loved by his family, his or her family. So I don't have an answer. I mean, I talked in circles just like a politician should, but I don't have an answer, because we hear this. I hear that question every day.
I wasn't trying to say I expect you to do that. I don't, because I actually do not think mental health, unless it's violence, has the position to be with the law enforcement. I don't either. I think that,
High five, sister.
I just don't. But I was just saying, who could I call?
San Francisco does that very thing where they put people on a Greyhound bus. It takes a little while to make it happen, but we're sitting there in psych emergency and we make this happen, and the county foots the bill. Yeah, it'd be great if we could do something like that.
And what is the name of the nonprofit in Fortuna? Is it through the police department? And
That's a great question. Let me do some texting right now.
okay.
This is a perfect example of why I'm here. I've been dealing with an elderly mother of mine that has dementia, and she's been diagnosed with psychosis at this point. And Priscilla, thank you for everything you've done for me, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have the services that I had. She's directed me in all the services that we've had, and I've learned a whole lot in the last 60 days that I've been dealing with my mother. And then I'm also finding out that there is no place to put her. There is no place for her. We're also finding out that trying to get help that can come and be with her during the day, so it gives you a break. My brother is so burned out, he's ready to ask Tom to have one of his men take him to jail so he can get away from her, because they were yeah, I know. And because they were at my brother's house 4 times this week, and they finally just said, hey, we can't come out there anymore. And I understand why, because there is no violence in there. There's nothing going on like that. She's just psychotic, and she thinks she's being held against her will. And when you're trying to explain to somebody that doesn't remember something that you said 10 minutes ago, she's going to say that that didn't happen. So you are dealing with the mentally ill at that point. I've had firsthand, experience with somebody that, and I didn't know this was going to happen 60 days ago. My mom was doing fine 60 days ago. She was walking around in town at 83 years old, taking care of herself. And she was living at home. And now all of a sudden she fell, bumped her head, got an aneurysm, and boom, she's done. And she's perfectly healthy. I mean, as far as an 83-year-old woman, she's in great shape, but she just lost her mind. And so when we're trying to find a place to put her, and when we try to put her in our home, it's impossible. I mean, she needs help. So I finally working with the doctors, working with RCS. I've been to the hospital 6 times in the last 9 days, and spent various hours there talking with the psychologists, the doctors. They can't help you because they just treat them for the physical part and not the mental part. The social, it's called a social issue. When the word dementia is involved in it, that's what protects them in that way. And I understand it all, but it gets frustrating for all of us. And I'll tell you what, Tom, that hospital over there, if there's any way that they can turn that thing into a mental health place, I'll put a sign in front of my house all day long. And so I'll talk to you after the
Hi, my question is for you. I'm Tom Allman. Even though it's not the job of law enforcement to, be able to handle mentally ill people, they're not, obviously trained for, health issues. What training do they have in crisis communication to de-escalate situations for mentally ill people?
Hold on one second. The answer to the other question of the nonprofit in Fortuna is the Betty Kwan, Kwan, Chin Outreach. Betty Kwan Chin Outreach. So law enforcement, we have a very good friend with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. And my mother calls herself a NAMI mommy. NAMI is a very, very important nonprofit organization that works with law enforcement and other community organizations to teach critical incident training. We've had several critical incident training programs going on at the sheriff's office to train our deputy sheriffs and our our correctional deputies, as well as getting community members in there, and we're trying to schedule another most likely in January. It's kind of intense for 2 days of learning the critical incident training, because there's a lot of things to say which are good, and there's a lot of things you don't say that are bad. And so that's what we're working. But I know that in the police academies, they do basic de-escalation of suicide prevention, of talking to someone, talking them out of a weapon or so forth. I was a hostage negotiator for 15 years, and I certainly was given a lot additional training on this. But as far as your run-of-the-mill deputy sheriff or police officer, it's usually 8 hours, maybe every 2 years, for critical incident training.
Regarding NAMI, it's for family members too. I didn't learn about it until after my son suicided. Tough love isn't the way to go with mentally ill. And NAMI can tell you the difference. They can help you with the prescriptions, that cocktail that was spoken about. Don't wait until it's too late like I did. They help the sheriff, but they're there for family members too, because dealing with a crazy person can make you crazy.
I just wanted to remind people, I can tell there's a lot of frustration with handling someone in a crisis situation. And I think what's great about this project is that, if we can really start talking about mental health issues and finding services before we've had the crisis, that's really the key to unlocking a lot of what's going on in our minds. And I wanted to let you know that if you go on Psychology Today and you go find a therapist within 100 miles of where you are, there's a list of, I had no idea, but there's a list of therapists all over the county, and it's actually one of the largest databases for therapists. There's all kinds on there, and you can read a description about them, and you can email them, you can have a consult, so if you have a family member, and it's a really helpful way, I think, to sort of prevent the crisis down the line. So I just want to remind people of that.
Yeah, just just being kind of an outsider. The one thing I pick up from everybody is that we don't feel like we really have the numbers we need to call. And part of the reasons we're here is because we're all concerned. And I'd like you to think about it just a little bit differently. One is, in the short term, we only have a few numbers that we can call. But in the longer term, we all have the right numbers to call. Because all of us, in our phones, in our directories, we have hundreds of names of friends, of family, of people, of acquaintances that we've met. And in the next couple of months, you can call everybody in your directory and ask them to please help you, please help your family, please help the community, and vote for this proposition that will bring a place where we can call and we can send people to. So that's our challenge. In the short term, we don't have a lot of options. But in 3 months, we have all the options in the world if we exercise the phone numbers that we have.
Cal, I want to make you aware of another opportunity, another number that people can call that I just found out about. I wanted to tell you just briefly the story behind this. There's one of the largest youth involvement groups in the country, getting youth involved in projects for their communities, and they started getting crisis calls to their helpline just to get people involved, with youth particularly saying, I'm in crisis. All kinds of crises. I'm being bullied, I have a mental health crisis. And rather than just go, well, we don't deal with that, they started a crisis line, but it's called Crisis Text Line. Oh, it's on the list, good. crisistextline.org. And what it is, they started out in a couple of cities, and then they spread all over the country. And because youth text, and now many of us text, the way you can get help immediately if you're in crisis is these numbers. So I'll just read them to you. And if you have a smartphone, you'll see why it's these numbers. 741-741. So if you look up the side, left side of your smartphone, those are the numbers, 741-741. It's a free crisis line.
I tested it, and I got almost an immediate response.
It's an incredible resource that's just started to happen. So the people that are on the other end of that are trained counselors to deal with all kinds of crises. And it's a text-oriented thing. So you can be, those that have text, and every youth, does. So you can be sitting in the library or sitting in and you can get immediate help. They will text you back very, very quickly, as Susan said, and then find out, kind of get you from a hot crisis time to a cool down to then, okay, now what do you do? And then they can connect you with resources in your local area, because they connect with resources where you are. So I've just found out about it. It's a resource. I'm glad you found out as well and got it on there. And you can put in help or whatever, whatever message you want to say, or I need to talk, and again, it's not just for youth, it's for anybody, and it obviously doesn't solve all the problems, but it's an immediate resource. It's just taken off all over the country, and it sounds like a really good thing. How did you do it?
On your smartphone, you go to your messages, your text messages, and you just put in 741-741 and send it.
Tom, did you see signs that your brother was suicidal, or did he talk about it, or were there things you missed and wished you'd known?
That's a really important question, because with suicide, and we all know this, there's this after feeling of whether you're mad or you're sad, you're certainly guilty. What did I miss? What should I have seen? And I'm the coroner of this county, and Mendocino County is the 11th in the state per capita for suicides. And did I see something in my brother? I don't know. I mean, I didn't see anything that would have said, golly sakes, are you okay? He never said, gosh, if you don't call me, I'm going to kill myself. But then, should we be checking on our family members? Yeah. Should we be calling or texting on a weekly basis and say, hey, brother, how are you? Hey, Mom, you doing okay? I mean, these are things that we need to do. But no, I didn't pick up anything like that. He was he was an Air Force veteran, gone to the college. He was a brilliant guy, you know. But you just never know. People have demons, Margie, and if you miss the demons, you miss the demons. One of the interesting things about Mendocino County is we have people from all over the nation that come here to commit suicide. It's the damnedest thing because we're such a beautiful county and they want to end their life in Mendocino County, usually on the coast. So that's one of the reasons that we're 11 per capita for suicides, because we have so many out-of-towners. But mental health we're not going to package them up immediately if they're from a different county, if they're just in need of help. We're going to treat them here. But one of the interesting things about funding for the care of that mentally ill person is we're going to try to get them back to the county they're coming from, whether it's in an ambulance or hopefully not in a marked patrol car. I mean, honestly, we want to give the person the dignity of who they are as a human being and get them back to where they can see their family and so forth. Right now, when somebody is mentally ill and they're 5150, they're either taken to Yuba County, they're taken to Vallejo for 72 hours. Their family's not able to really get them clothes, or they're not able to see their relatives. They're treated by physicians that they will not see after their 72 hours. And so one of the benefits, if we have a local mental health facility, is they'll be treated by doctors that they're going to see next week. Their families can drop in and say, you know, how's he doing? If they smoke, they can take them cigarettes. I mean, that's just the way mental health works. So we're in a really cool spot right now where we can do something where 10 years from now, people are going to say, I'm sure glad the voters did what they did in 2017, because we're going to see the results. Let me just finish with me. When's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the next best time to plant a tree? Now. And we're trying to plant a tree.
I want to just remind everybody that when you leave, there's some resources here that you can take. One of them has my phone number. I'm happy to talk to people at any time if you have more questions. We'll continue with a few more questions before we wrap up for tonight. But just wanted to let you know that clearly this is a dialogue that it needs to continue, will continue. And we have some immediate things that we can do. And then, you know, we're going to all be living in this community for a while. And so we're all going to be in support of each other, dealing with all the things we'll deal with as we go through time together.
It's really refreshing the way you share in such an open way, very honestly, very clearly about your diagnosis and what you deal with. So you destigmatize it, and I think that's what we need. We need to talk about it just like we're talking about a physical problem, like you said, Jed. So could you say more about how you got there?
I was 15 when I came out. People didn't talk about homosexuality then. And I was 15 and I didn't understand why standing at the bus stop and smoking cigarettes in the morning with the other guys, I wasn't interested in first base, second base, third base, you know, with girls. I was watching one of the other guys. Anyway, I was gay and I didn't know what I was. I had to go, I found a book that in the library on aberrations of sexual conduct or something like that, and then homosexuality was in there. So I was very embarrassed about the whole thing. Finally, I told my mother when I was 15, I said, you know, something's wrong, I'm gay. She said, I don't know what to do. She said, I love you, you'll go to a psychiatrist, I guess. So my father would put the flag out every day because both my brothers were in Vietnam at the same time. One was in the front lines in the Marines, another one was in Saigon, sergeant in Saigon. And about 6 weeks after I'd been going to a psychiatrist, my father got real mad one night. I don't remember how it came about, but he said, if you two don't tell me what's going on, I'm going to walk out of this house. And I yelled out, Daddy, I'm queer. And he sat down in, I thought this was it. He sat down in this big butterfly chair. I'll never forget it. And he said, "Why didn't you say so?" And then, no, wait a minute. Then he went on to explain to me, he said, "I had to go to a psychiatrist once." He was embarrassed about it. He was absolutely embarrassed about it, and I was to be embarrassed about it. I wasn't embarrassed about it. As a matter of fact, after a year of going to see this guy and he was trying to change me, I finally said, "Give it up. I'm not coming back to see you anymore. This is ridiculous." But I don't know. When I heard that it was a disease, it kind of made it all right. If it, I wasn't as crazy as I thought. I know I'm crazy, and my family calls me crazy, and I love the word. But in reality, though, I just never thought of it as anything. When they told me it was a disease, it was all right. Suddenly I wasn't responsible anymore. I had to do what I could do with it, but suddenly things were out of my hands. I had to look to somebody else to get help. And I've never been embarrassed about it. Bipolar, you can't really see it. And like I said, as long as I take my medication, I'm fine. I love my medication. It does the job, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I want to just thank everybody, the panel, you all for being here, and Tom, maybe have a final word before we leave. I just want to acknowledge that I said when I first started, it was a little bit scary to share and to come out and to kind of put words to what goes on inside my head. And I just want to thank everybody for being a caring presence. And I think I would offer that we take that out with us. The man in the back had said, we all have friends, we all have people, we all, can share what we learned, we can talk about it in our own lives. If you've learned anything or this has touched you in some way, take it out, share it, be the person that's going to keep this dialogue going, and then obviously do the things that we need to do to get services in the area that we all need.
Like I said, I would have lost a bet if I had been told there were 100 people that wanted to talk about or listen about mental illness tonight. The what? Well, I really thank you, and I ask you to number one, please register to vote. Please consider Measure B. I'll meet you outside and talk more so I don't get in trouble right now. But we have a chance to make a difference in this county. And it used to be methamphetamine, the number one public safety issue. And I'm telling you right now, it's mental health. And there's some people in this room who've touched my lives, and I've met them through my career. And I know why they're here, and I know what their desire is. And I'm saying, let's all get on this bandwagon to figure out a way to improve the quality of life for Mendocino County, for our tourists, for our visitors, for ourselves, for our families, for our grandkids. We have a chance. But thank you for being here tonight. Thank you very, very much.